The best lawyers aren't found in the big law firms. They're found in the stories of those who left. Hello to listeners and viewers of the Sell Life podcast. I have with me today a founding member of the Self-Employed Lawyers League, Sarah Bradley-McKay of Bradley McKay Lawyers. Sarah, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jason.
Now, first question off the bat, it's very standard, everyone gets it. When did you decide to start studying law and why did you take the law degree path?
Okay, so I guess I think a lot of the reason a lot of lawyers start studying law is because they're not very good at maths. Well, that was my situation. So I didn't really enjoy maths or sciences at school. I very much enjoyed the humanities, politics, history, English, those sorts of subjects where you need to be able to string a sentence together. And they were my strongest subjects. And, at the time, I'm not sure what it's like now, but at the time, if you were good at those subjects, law was a very viable option to take. So, yeah, it was for want of any better option, I guess. Yeah, I did. It wasn't like I didn't study legal studies. I wasn't particular, I didn't watch a whole lot of crime shows. But I was interested in the formation of arguments and persuasive writing, and that's just.
And so, did you go straight from high school to straight into uni? Down the path
so I just missed out on getting into law first time round, straight after VCE or Year 12. And I did a first year arts at Monash, and you had to get a distinction average or whatever in your first year in order to be able to transfer into law. So I just then added law, and I did a double degree arts law at Monash Uni. And it was the same time frame because I think you only do one law subject in a combined law program at Monash. So I was just ahead in an arts subject and behind in a law subject. So it didn't add any extra time.
And I preface this by saying I studied law later in life, and so I was also working full time, and so I can't say my grades were of the absolute highest. They were good. I had a few high distinctions, but usually I was sort of a mid to high range student. What sort of student were you through the law degree?
It kind of varied. My arts degree was, I did a lot better in my arts subjects, to be honest. And I still maintain that it was my arts degree, my politics major, that enabled me to write well, or taught me to write well and argue well. At Monash Uni, there are a lot of really, really smart graduates or, undergrads. So you sort of Monash Law School was very much, the creme de la creme coming from all the different schools. So it was a bit of a rude shock, to be honest. My marks were kind of credit, the odd distinction, not nothing to blow your socks off. But I remember when I was doing my summer clerkship at a national law firm and ended up getting an articles year with that firm. I remember one of the commercial litigation partners saying, that there was a real difference between studying law and practicing law, and that I was good at practicing law. So that was a good, that was sort of enough of an offhanded comment to keep me going.
Yeah, I heard it on, I think it was Clarissa Raywood's got a podcast called the Happy Lawyer, Happy Life podcast, which I was listening to when I first started studying. And I'm sure it was her, or it was nearly every guest would say fours open doors. And so it was just something I'd remind myself of. It's okay. Like you can get a job if as long as you've got the degree, you'll find somewhere. It mightn't be the top tier. But so your first few years were in a fairly big firm?
Yeah, so my first couple of years, so I did an articles year and a first year at Hunt & Hunt Lawyers, which is a national law firm, and did a 6-month rotation in articles in commercial and insurance litigation, and then a 6-month rotation in commercial law. And that was like just a really good grounding, and working in a big firm, you've got the hierarchy, that you've got the the partners are the ones who are a bit tricky to navigate, and the nicer ones, and the senior associates. And then you've got this great camaraderie amongst the more junior lawyers, and go out and probably, go out on a Friday night in the city, and all of that stuff. And we actually just, I actually just reconnected with that cohort from Hunt and Hunt Lawyers recently over dinner, and we were all we all agreed that it was just a really good bunch of people. So even though I didn't love the law firm life, that way of practicing law, and I haven't been back into a big firm since I left Hunt and Hunt, but that was fun, and it was a really good way to start my legal career for sure.
Yeah. Oh, and that's great. And it does come down to, I think, no matter the industry or anything, it's if the people you're around are good, you can sort of withstand any of the pressures or some of the negative parts of it. But were you strategic in, I want to go down the commercial law pathway, or was it more that's what was available, and so I got the experience there, and then obviously with your career as it's progressed, you've been very experienced there? Yeah.
I don't think anything's been particularly strategic about my career, unfortunately. I think I remember thinking like the litigation stuff was a bit scary. In those days they would send you up to court with no briefing, no background whatsoever, and you just have to go and ask for an adjournment, or it was stressful. I remember doing county court circuit, driving down to Hamilton at the drop of a hat, to get there by 10 o'clock in the morning to meet the barrister. And so I didn't love that. But what I did love about, so that's why I kind of opted to go the commercial route. And I remember thinking at the time, I loved the creativity of drafting. I thought the commercial law work enabled me to be a bit more creative and strategic in my approach to practicing law, not my career. But whereas the litigation felt a bit more restricted, and you have to draft pleadings in a particular way, and you have to, and there's very specific steps that you move through. And for whatever reason, I didn't really enjoy that particularly, but I think it was still a really good experience. I'm so glad I did that time in litigation. But appearing in court was I found it extremely nerve-wracking. I'd probably do a lot better at it now, but at the time, I thought commercial was the way to go.
Yeah, well, it is. And I remember when I first got into working, I was doing obviously business development in a firm, but also learning to be a lawyer. And I asked to work on the days I was learning to clerk and being sent to the court to do different things like that. I asked to be in the insolvency space simply because I wanted to learn that side. And the lawyer who was sort of mentoring me, he said, I think long term, he said, you need to be on the front end of things, because he said you love looking forward and the creativity of where can this business go and what contracts can we write to bring it. Whereas he said litigation and insolvency especially is entirely historical, and we're arguing of what has been. And he said, I think you need to be in a space of what could come. And I was like, it was such good just advice. And I'm like, for anyone to think, do you like to look back over history and argue over that? And there's no right or wrong, but or do you like the creativity of like drafting a contract? I think George, when I had him on the podcast earlier this week, he said it's like writing a story. And he said it's telling a narrative of what do we want this relationship to look like. And I was like, it was such a beautiful way and a creative way of looking at, that's what commercial contracting and drafting can be.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, that was, and I remember distinctly thinking that, it just feels a bit more creative, and and there's more scope to add value and to be helpful, and to do what I do. Yeah.
Well, and then so you said you left private practice. Was that to go to an in-house role?
No, so I left the bigger firm to go to a boutique law firm, so still in private practice. And so that was Anisimoff Davenport, it was called at the time. It became Anisimoff Legal. And I worked there for, I think it was around 9 years. So and that was another really positive experience. So specializing in advertising and marketing law, it's just another flavour of commercial law. But it's got a particular focus, obviously. So it was a lot of, the firm did a lot of trade promotion lotteries. so which are, that needed permits, so competitions, sweepstakes competitions to promote goods and services. So that was that was the bread and butter, but there was also a lot of reviewing advertising copy for compliance with the Trade Practices Act, as it was then known, now obviously the Australian Consumer Law. But it was really, it exposed me to quite a lot of different industries and areas of law. So it was obviously it was those specific, ACL trade practices, lots and lots of contract drafting and contract reviews, lots of advertising copy approvals, lots of different regulatory frameworks applicable to advertising and marketing activities. So, 1 minute I'd be advising an agency who was doing a motor vehicle advertisement. And then the next it would be financial services, and the next it would be like fast moving consumer goods or a therapeutic good. Lots of intellectual property came into that, trademark protection, copyright issues. So, and also, I started at Anisimoff. I did my first year there, and then I was sort of the manager that I had in the Melbourne office, went off on maternity leave. And so then I became the manager of the Melbourne practice, and I was pretty young at the time, so that was a really good opportunity. And managing a small team, I think it was about 4 to 6 people, but at one stage it sort of got 8 or 9 people, and so managing paralegals and junior lawyers, and yeah, that was dealing with a lot of boutique advertising and promotional agencies, but also big global advertising agencies, as well as advising companies directly who were, so that was a real, again, cutting my teeth in all sorts of different areas of commercial law.
Yeah. Well, and obviously fulfilling if you stayed there for 9 years. And just for any business owners listening, because I remember when I found out competitions and giveaways actually there's pretty heavy regulation around it, because I worked in an electrical wholesaling company, a national one, and we would obviously do lots for tradies. You're doing lots of giveaways, like giveaway.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize how much we had to work with the general counsel at the time, because I was like, I didn't even know there was legislation about this. He's like, mate, yeah, because he said it's gambling. What is for the listeners, without giving legal advice, but what is the threshold of a competition where you actually have to abide by the legislation?
Well, I mean, the classic distinction, the fundamental distinction is it a game of chance or a game of skill? If it's a game of chance, if any element of chance is involved, then it's a trade promotion lottery, and it's promoting a good or service. Excuse me. And the legislation differs in each state and territory. So there's different prize value thresholds. I haven't been practicing in that area for a very long time, so I know it has definitely changed. But you had to get a permit at that stage in New South Wales, ACT, Victoria if it was over 5K, and then SA if it was over 500. But then WA, Queensland, Tas didn't have a formal permit system, but they still had legislation that applied. So most companies, want to run a national trade promotion lottery. So it was a matter of making sure all those permits were there and making sure the permit number was printed on all the promotional material, making sure the promotional material complied with not only the trade promotion lottery legislation, but also the Australian consumer legislation. And so it was, and a lot of money goes into these, some of these national competitions. There's an above the line, a below the line sort of marketing spend, and and drafting the terms and conditions, obviously. So some of them were really interesting. I remember there was one where it was like you win a share in a racehorse, and so drafting the terms and conditions for that was it was a bit more complex, whereas others were just win a holiday, win a Sony Walkman. I'm just like, this is how old I am. But so it was all that. But also I did a lot of advertising copy clearances, like for particularly I did a whole lot of Honda advertisements. So we acted for Honda directly, lots of Ford advertisements, Suzuki. So it was just it was a good time. But stressful and busy. But my boss at the time, who was also really amazing mentor, Tony Anisimoff, he found his niche pretty young, and he set up a practice, and it's been very successful.
Yeah, no, I love that. And obviously, I talk about niche monopoly all the time. It's
Absolutely,
nice to hear. It's fairly timeless. That's what I've learned is people look for that niche all the time, and then suddenly you become that go-to.
yeah.
So, and this is because I have some inside information from the networking events and stuff we do inside the league. I know you and George had some fun back and forth about entertainment law. When
Yep.
did the entertainment side of things come into your career?
So when we moved to New Zealand, I spent a couple of years in a very traditional. I was at the bottom of New Zealand in Dunedin, a university town. I spent a couple of years doing commercial and property law there. And then this opportunity came up in Dunedin, of all places, with a company called NHNZ, or Natural History New Zealand. And it used to be part of TVNZ. It was the natural history unit of TVNZ. At the time that I was working there, it was privately owned. But it was a production house, a television production house that made content for the global market, natural history, predominantly natural history, or so wildlife documentaries, but also observational documentaries. And they made a whole lot of content for Discovery Channel, Nat Geo, China Central Television, PBS in the United States. And that job just came up, and because I think of my advertising and marketing / media loosely background at Anisimoff, that I'd spent that time there, and not a huge pool of lawyers in that space in the South Island of New Zealand, I was lucky enough to get that job. So that was my first in-house role back in 2014, and it was a great role. Like, it was really exciting that, making really high quality television content, and really interesting, and working with really interesting people, and very passionate people. They'd made documentaries about Antarctica, about the Pacific Ocean, China. But then there was a really fun show that I worked on called LA Frockstar, and it was about this this woman in LA who ran this vintage clothing store, and all these celebrities used to come in, and she would find these outfits from her vintage clothing collection. Like that, just really interesting stuff that you wouldn't normally expect. Yeah. So that was my first in-house role and TV role. And that kind of, unfortunately, NHNZ, I'm not sure what sort of capacity it exists in these days. I don't think it exists anymore. At least, it was real at one stage. It was a big 2-story building in Dunedin and the pride of, the New Zealand. But unfortunately, for what changing landscapes, etc., it is no longer. But so I was made redundant. That role was made redundant 2 years in, and we then decided to move back to Melbourne. So I did another couple of years. I got a job with another business, sort of a privately owned property development, hospitality, diverse kind of investment portfolio. So I was general counsel for a couple of years there, doing again more general commercial, corporate advisory work. And then shortly, a couple of years there, and then got the job at Token Group, which again was back in entertainment. So Token Group, they are an artist management company, but they also have a television production arm called Guesswork Television, and a related known as Thinkative Television. As well as live touring events. They tour a lot of comedians around Australia and for the Melbourne International Comedy Festival. So, so spent nearly 5 years at Token Group working on a number of productions for Guesswork Television.
Yeah. Yeah, wow. That's such a broad... And then throughout all these, such a varied career, but there's sort of, you can see the strings of the connectivity from each of them. Was self-employment ever in your head? like as a potential down the line, or something I've always wanted but not yet, not right now? Or
So when I went on maternity leave, I was still at Anisimoff, and I, had my first child, and then thought about going back in some kind of part-time capacity. But I lived sort of out in the outer northeastern suburbs at that stage. The thought of commuting into St Kilda Road every day was just like not what I was about, and so I made the decision at that time, and I wanted to have another child as well. I made the decision at that time to start my own thing, but it was very much a look. I'm just going to do this in the meantime until I can kind of get back in the job market. So I did have get my own principal practicing certificate. I did a conveyancing course to sort of add some an extra string to my bow. And, for a couple of years, I just did that. I did little bits and pieces as I could in and around babies and toddlers. But then when we decided to move to New Zealand for family reasons, I thought, I want to go and work for someone else now. And when I was living in Dunedin, or when we were living in Dunedin, it's classic line, everything's 7 minutes away, or less. So, commuting wasn't an issue. So that's when I got the job at the traditional law firm. And so, I remember thinking, oh, this is great to just, to be back in the office and to be, and so I never really, up until very recently, I didn't really consider self-employment again. Self-employment previously was just something to keep my toe in the water, to keep a little bit of money coming in, but, not really, I wasn't going to really take it much further than that. So then I went back into the workforce and worked my way through, and then it was in only sort of halfway through last year that I thought, actually, I'm a bit sick of this. I really wanted to, that was when I thought, right, I'm going to give this a really good go.
Yeah. And that moment, because I always love hearing about that moment. One, because obviously I'm the guy who loves people becoming self-employed. So that's whatever those moments are. What was it that you were sick of, and what was it that you were looking for to go, I want to be in control? That's what I call it.
I think it was, it was a combination of factors. I reckon I had to, so when I left Token Group after nearly 5 years, I was concerned. I sort of thought, okay, I turned 50. I thought to myself, I've got 10, 15 years left in me, and I've really got to make money so I can retire and we can have a nice life and pay off my mortgage. But I really didn't want to keep having to do the same thing over and over. It's worked. It's earned me a pretty good living, I've earned some good money, but I wanted to do it more on my terms in the next 10 to 15 years. And I had a bit more freedom to do that. I think as my kids were older and my husband's business was doing really, really well. So in 2024, in 2024, I'd spent nearly 5 years with Token Group. I'd kind of done everything at least 2 or 3 times. And I was worried about being being a bit pigeonholed. The entertainment industry is pretty small. There's a few entertainment law specialists. I don't consider myself one of them, to be honest. A lot of them have been there doing what they've been doing for 20, 30 years. I've been doing it for, 7, specifically TV production. And so I thought I probably, if I'm going to, advance my career, I probably need to go and work for a bigger company as a senior legal counsel, work under an experienced general counsel. I've only ever been in sole charge roles or head of roles. I've never actually worked under an experienced general counsel. So off I went and I did that. But for whatever reason, it just didn't work out in the particular company that I landed in. And then before I could really sort of decide what I was going to do there, I got shoulder tapped to take on an executive role at a different company. And to cut a long story short, neither of those roles were good roles for me. So I was exhausted, starting 2 new senior roles within the space of a 6-month period. put a lot of myself and, you get to know the people and you get to know the legal issues, and it's, you really do sort of dive in head first. So I'd done that twice and I thought, I don't want to do that for a third time.
Yeah.
And so I thought, you know what, and the other thing that was sort of starting to really irk me was that, women, people over 50, for whatever reason in corporate Australia, tend to be a bit invisible. And, I've heard it from enough people and experienced myself I wanted to take my power back. I didn't want to have to rely on recruiters to sort of, pick me and put me forward. I wanted to do that myself. So I thought, well, if all I have to worry about is getting the work and doing the work, I've been doing it for over 25 years. I'll just do that. So it was really just, I wanted to take my power back. I wanted to set myself up and have a quality of life for the next 10 to 15 years, and not kind of just slog it out as I had been doing up until then, until finally I retire and have some sort of retirement, which no one is guaranteed. Like you could die before then, right? And be miserable in the meantime. And also, teenage kids, turns out, are not on remote control. In many cases, they're even more hands-on, and they need you even more than they did when they were 5 or 6. In fact, I say to my son all the time, it was easier to get you out of bed in the morning and, to where you needed to go when you were 3 than it is when you're 17.
It is such a formidable time too, because you're going like 0 to 5, yes, but the fact is they're going to be with you for at least another 10 to 15. Yeah. Whereas at this point, they're actually about to be let loose on the world, and so you want to make sure whatever values and everything you wanted them to embody. Exactly. It's a great reason to be there. And so, Bradley McKay Lawyers, what's the vision, and what do you want it to be? Because it's still obviously early days, and I know we're working on how can we grow it. But what's the vision that you'd like to foresee it being?
So I guess I really am still working that out. I wish I had this really clear-cut winning strategy. I don't. I've built it on the basis of what I've done in the past, what I've had a lot of experience in, what I know I'm good at, what I know I can do. Unlike when I previously went out on my own, I thought, I'll do conveyancing. It's like, no, just stick to your knitting, stick to what you've done, and just be really good at that. So I guess, looking back at my legal experience, I've kind of, I've spent roughly 15 years in private practice and roughly 10 years in in-house roles. And so I thought, well, how can I combine that, and how can I sort of package up my service offering? So I've sort of divided it into 3 sections as a commercial lawyer, entertainment lawyer, and an in-house generalist lawyer, which some people would argue, well, it's kind of, it bleeds into commercial law and entertainment law, but I do think it's a separate category in itself. And I guess I really wanted to, going back into private practice, I didn't want to sacrifice my in-house experience, which I really enjoyed and that I was really good at. And that's why fractional in-house legal services is so appealing to me, to be able to sort of, be part of the business and provide that in-house support and expertise, but not on a sort of a permanent basis as a permanent overhead, but more on a consulting, but regular, continuous basis. So I can get ahead of the issues. I can be the voice on the other end of the phone, or I come into the office, whether it's virtual or remote. And so they're my 3 practice areas. I guess I'm just going to see how it all goes. At the moment, I've had, some entertainment law work, some commercial law work. I've had some contract, short-term contract work through secondment agencies, and I'm still trying to work it out. Ideally, though, I think I would like to have a predominantly fractional in-house practice where I have like a core group of clients. That I scale up or scale down the services as required. But, I can build those relationships over time and get to know the business and and provide that value. But, you know, from a kind of, I guess when you're a fractional in-house counsel, you've got that little bit of distance and separation. So you're not getting tangled in the weeds of the day-to-day like a senior legal counsel or a head of legal and pulled every which way and, you know, priorities being, you know, dumped on you left, right and centre. Like, I think that's the perfect balance for me, you know, to have that ongoing relationship. It's not just, you know, here's your contract, see you, you know, I'll wait to hear from you next year. It's more of a building up of an in-house, whether it's, I guess there's two categories of the fractional legal services business. It's like, it's either supporting existing legal teams, so which are, you know, might be large or small, but depending, you know, to support them through particular projects or, you know, when things are particularly busy, but also smaller or medium businesses that don't currently have an in-house function and haven't budgeted for a permanent overhead, legal overhead, but want to start building that up over time. So that's my other core market.
Which is, I can say with absolute confidence, that's my passion. Like, self-employment for me, obviously we're the Self-Employed Lawyers League, so I want lawyers to be self-employed, but I just believe in self-employment as almost a philosophy sort of thing. But what I have seen in the survival of businesses in their first 10 years is atrocious. 80 to 90% do not make it. And what I've looked at is actually it's because they don't get the same advice that the bigger companies get. And if there was a way of them having the advice, I think the percentage that survive past 10 years would be higher, which is why when I started seeing fractional GC start to becoming a bit more common, and it's getting more and more, it's still not fully mainstream, but it's becoming more and more. I'm like, this is going to help the SME community in a huge way, because like my dad was an accountant for 30 years and he would see his clients every 3 months, and he was not just an accountant, but a business advisor. And I still can't fathom, why don't lawyers see their clients every 3 months? Because you cannot say that you're not facing risks and needing to be strategic about the decisions you make often. And I get a small to medium business can't afford full-time, but the fractional, to me, it's just going to be, and I hope to see the data come through. Like, I think fractionals around 2020 to 2022 started becoming more popular. I think by 2030, we'll see the survival rates of the SMEs creep higher and higher.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be based on people like you being able to come in and take them through that journey. Also, because you've worked at the bigger companies, so you know what they need, what the reason they survive, and all those things that you can bring to a business. So to me, it's exciting because that's what I'm excited to have you in the league, which is my next question.
I was just going to say, Jason, I think also just to your point, like, people don't know what they don't know. And so the problem is that, and I was having this conversation with a potential referrer the other day, like, they don't understand that they've registered a business name, so but they don't have trademark protection, you know, or they you know, just because they've registered a company name doesn't mean they're not vulnerable to infringing someone else's trademark. So, or, you know, they'll get a contract from off online, you know, template contract, but it's not going to reflect all the things that they've agreed or necessarily protect them in the way that they need it to protect them. And so I think people can get a false sense of security, you know, that they've checked a particular box and they don't need to worry about it anymore. And I'm not trying to scare people, obviously, but it's just these sorts of just check-in conversations before they go too far down the track can be really helpful, because it's just like, oh, well, no, okay, we'll need to do that now, you know, or we'll need to get you to have a look at that before we sign off on it. And, you know, so there's all those things that and the other thing the other important point to make is, because I was also asked this question by this potential referrer, you know, well, what sort of retainer model are you offering? And I said, well, it just depends. Like, you know, some companies, some organizations might want just like 5 hours a month. Others might want 10. Others might want to, you know, and you'd want to build in reviews, like, you know, 3 months, see how it's going. Do we need to adjust it? We need to pare it back, up it, whatever, you know. So, so I'm trying to be too fixed about an idea of what it looks like isn't that helpful either. Like, so I want to be able to tailor it to all to the client, to say what's going to actually suit you. What are the legal issues facing your business? What are the hotspots? What's your budget? let's start with this and then let's look at it again in 3 months' time.
Yeah, which is a great way to do it. And I love throwing it back on people when they say, like, what's the package or what's the thing? Like, sometimes there is one, but often they go, oh, I thought you were a unique business. Are you just the same as every other business out there? And it's sort of, they go, yeah, good point. And then they go, yes. So I go, it has to be case by case. No, it's a good way to do it. The Self-Employed Lawyers League, you are a founding member. So A, tell me why you joined, and B, what it's been like so far the first few weeks or month.
Well, I joined because I really felt like I needed to connect with other self-employed lawyers. So that was, I think, from both a professional and a personal perspective, I think it's really good to be able to connect with like-minded people and like-minded professionals who are doing the same or similar work that I do, and regarding them as collaborators and collegial support, because when you're in sole practice, you don't get that. So I think it's really important to be able to tap in to those other people and see them as not competitors, but as people we can all help each other. We can all give each other tips, and there's plenty of work to go around, as you often say, Jason. And it's about kind of building up that sort of collaborative, nice vibe, and the online sessions are great for doing that. And I also needed a bit more direction and strategy about how I was going to get these clients, And so from what I've learned so far, doing the online modules, the Core 4, and participating in these weekly conversations, it's given me some real insight. Lawyer, I've never had to go out and market myself before. Obviously, you don't do that when you're an in-house lawyer. You're very much sitting at the back end. And when I was doing it previously, like I said, it was really just a bit of a side hustle until I could get myself back into my career again. So I needed that strategic help with marketing myself and how best to target clients and, just build a business. So those were the two reasons that I decided to join up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, thank you. We're honoured to have someone with your experience in there. And that's what excites me, is the vision of it. We can see if everyone comes together, the sole pracs and the boutiques. Courtney says, you always have to have an enemy. And I think I do in business because it's a competitive thing. And I like that, supporting the smaller boutiques in that, because I think they give a better service. I know your one-on-one service is going to be better than any big firm's going to offer, because it is cookie cutter. And bringing everyone together to be able to network and just share. As I say, we're all going to make mistakes. Unfortunately, business is about mistakes and then hopefully making less and less over time. Yeah. And if we do that more regularly, we'll all succeed together. So, yeah, very honoured to have you on board. Before we go, what is the best way for an SME, someone needing either a one-off and I believe someone will do a one-off with you, and then within a few months they'll realise, hey, maybe it'd be nice to have Sarah's advice regularly. That's how we'll build out some retainers. But what's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
So you can just direct message me on LinkedIn under Sarah Bradley-McKay, or you can go to my website at www.bmlawyers.com.au, and there's a whole lot of information about the different services that I provide, and an inquiry form, and my mobile number.
Fantastic. And we'll put those all in the show notes. Well, Sarah, awesome. Thank you very much for being a guest.
Thank you so much, Jason. Appreciate it. We rise and